Hello, welcome to the Retro Shed. I'm Barry, he is Josh. Now, what are we discussing today?
I swear, our intro gets faster and faster every video.
That's a good thing. Now, there are two computer systems that are very close to my heart, and these are the ones, obviously, I spent my time on as a child growing up. Have I grown up?
Yes. No.
No. There was, of course, the Amiga, which happens to be one of my all-time favourite computers, as we all know. But before I had the Amiga, I used a Toshiba HX10 MSX. Now, the MSX represented a bit of an impulse purchase for me. Well, my parents, they bought it. We weren't going to buy an MSX.
Oh, does that mean an impulse means you see something and go, buy it, I want it now,
yeah, kind
without
of,
thinking about it?
Yeah, kind of. But the salesperson at our local electronics Lasky store in Birmingham knew that the MSX platform was going to be better than the Commodore Plus 4 that I originally wanted. So when we went into the shop and had a look at the Plus 4, he kind of said, you don't want one of those, you want one of these. And do you know what? It wasn't a bad purchase. So yes, it was impulse, but no, I didn't regret it one bit.
Wait, do we have a Plus 4?
Yes, we have a Plus 4.
Which one do you think's better now?
The MSX by far. So today I want to have a look at the MSX, which is an important milestone in 8-bit computing, and that means time travelling back to 1983.
Well, I'm not the kind to kiss and tell, but I've been seen with Farrah. I've never been with anything less than a 9. So fine, I've been on fire with Sally Field, gone fast with a girl named Bo, but somehow they just don't end up as mine.
1983, Josh, what an absolutely cracking year that was. So in the cinema, in the movies, we were enjoying, Return of the Jedi, Christine,
Never heard of
cracking
it.
film, War Games, you've heard of War Games,
yes.
Krull,
No.
Jaws 3D, although the
3D.
less said about Jaws 3D, the better, to be honest with you.
Was it better than the original Jaws?
No, it was awful.
Right. In the music charts, we had Eurythmics,
Yeah.
Dire Straits, Bryan Adams, Soft Cell, U2, the only one I've actually heard about out of all of those, and Kenny G.
Kenny G.
Less said about him, the better.
Kenny G,
Apparently he's a bad singer, is he?
No, he's a saxophone player.
Apparently he's a bad saxophone player.
It was a good year. It certainly was a good year. And of course, in the UK especially, the home computer boom was in full swing. And every kid and his dog wanted a home computer. Now, of course, this home computer was wanted for just one thing. And that, of course, was to help with homework.
Yes.
And make little Billy smarter than his classmates through the use of this new technology.
Yeah, right. Gullible parents might have thought that, but of course it was all about one thing, and that was, of course, the gaming. Yeah, the games. Nothing else mattered to little Billy.
No.
Why isn't the name Billy?
Who is Billy anyway? So the main problem here was what computer to go for, or what computer could parents comfortably afford, and which was the best one to spend your money on. And here was the problem. The home computer market in 1983 was a real mess. There were dozens of computers to buy, right across the price range from $99.99 to right up to about £400-500, and they all claimed to be the best in class if you believed the adverts.
Rich parents who wanted the best educational machine went for the pretty expensive BBC Micro.
It was expensive.
Which was an excellent choice, and it was very well supported, and also relied on the fact that it is the one machine used at almost every school in the UK.
Yeah.
It was a safe choice, but not everyone could afford a BBC Micro.
No, just the rich kids. And that, of course, left mostly Commodore and Sinclair to mop up the rest of the market with their wonderful machines, the Commodore 64 and the Sinclair Spectrum. Now, they were both reasonably priced machines, very, very good at playing games and very, very well supported. But for every success story like the 64 and the Specky, there were dozens of machines released at this time. There were nothing more than complete market flops.
Flop. The problem is, it doesn't matter what computer you buy.
No.
If it's not supported with companies writing software for it, all you have is a useless, expensive plastic box.
Yes.
And don't forget that software in games written for one brand of computer would not run on one another.
No.
They were all bespoke, like
Absolutely.
nowadays. You try and shove a PlayStation disc in an Xbox.
Yeah.
Doesn't work.
Not
Trust
gonna
me,
work.
I've tried it.
Apart from PCs, of course.
Yes.
That's a different matter altogether. Now, the choice for the parents was mind-boggling, and if you ended up buying the wrong computer, you'd literally be throwing your money down the drain.
Mm-hmm.
The machines that were not considered successes in the UK pretty much, like the Texas Instruments TI-994A, the Jupiter Ace, Dragon 32, Acorn Electron, Mattel Aquarius, Enterprise 128, Auric 1, there are dozens of them. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that these were bad machines at all. It's just that they didn't sell particularly well. And the support for these machines wasn't particularly great. There wasn't that many games for them. And as a result, they didn't sell very well.
And worse still, if your parents backed the wrong horse, there was no way you could swap games openly at school. You'd have some serious mickey taking if you shouted that you wanted to swap games with another Auric or Enterprise owner.
Yeah, it's true.
Everyone else had blazer pockets for the Specky and Commodore tapes to swap.
That's
We
exactly
don't do that at school.
No.
We don't bring in Xbox and PlayStation games.
No.
I want Black Ops 3. Do you want Rocket League? Let's trade. Teacher
Things have
Walter,
changed
what
a
are you
bit.
doing?
Yeah, I used to have a pocket full of, or in the Amiga days, I had a pocket full of 3.5-inch discs in
Were
my
you allowed to
blazer.
do that?
Yeah,
we allowed to like the teacher said, "Oh, they can trade and don't matter."
Yeah, teachers didn't care. We'd be sat at our form lessons going through discs, and, like we swap football cards, we'd be swapping discs as well. So my point here is, in 1983, it was a tough decision based on what your budget was, or what your parents' budget was, what machine you were going to buy. Now, there were, of course, kids who really wanted Commodores and Spectrums, and parents were told by sales permission, oh, they're really only games machines. You don't really want to buy one of those. You want to buy one of these, pointing to something completely different. and the kids would be sat there going, one of those. But the problem was, parents didn't know any better, so they were pushed and pulled by salespeople. And it was around this time that a chap called Kazuhiko Nishi had an idea.
Was he Japanese?
He was Japanese, yes, he was a lovely Japanese gentleman. Mr. Nishi happened to be the president of ASCII Corporation in Japan, and also happened to be pals with Bill Gates. Which is a bonus being
Which is
pilled.
good,
yes,
yeah.
it's a good thing being friends with Bill Gates. But meanwhile, Bill and Nishi decided on a plan.
Now, Mr. Nishi saw the chaos and confusion in the world of home computers and thought it was about time he brought some peace and order to the madness. He got the idea from the VHS video platform and thought, wouldn't it be a great idea if home computers were a bit more like VHS video recorders? And could use any software written for them across a range of devices, regardless of the manufacturer.
It was a good idea, actually.
Yes.
And Nishi set about creating not a computer, but a standard that computers could adhere to. And a standard that any company could get on board and create a computer for that would be able to use the same software and hardware as any other computer, as long as it met that standard. MSX standard was born at this point.
Yeah, around this time, Nishi ended up working with Bill Gates, and together they created the MSX, standard based around a version of Microsoft Basic.
Yeah.
So this thing is like a Windows computer, isn't it?
How dare you?
So,
dare you.
now it's not exactly 100% sure what MSX stands for, but I don't agree with this. It's generally known that MSX stands for one of two things, either Microsoft, yeah, that works, the M, Extended Basic.
Yeah.
That doesn't work. Or machines with software exchangeability. That one works. But either will do, because B's on the end, and it's basic, but...
It just did, and that's all you need to know, so just accept it. So, MSX was launched in 1983, but what exactly was it?
Here's one by Canon. There's a JVC. This is a Mitsubishi. This is a Sanyo. There's a Sony. Over there is a Toshiba. And this one is from Hitachi. They are part of a group of 17 different machines from 17 manufacturers where, although the machines themselves look rather different one from another, they all have one thing in common. 3 letters. MSX. MSX stands for the operating system on which they all work. Now that's very interesting because what it's supposed to do is to give these machines what's called software compatibility, or if you would like that in English, it comes down to this. It means that I should be able to whip the cartridge out of this one, swap it with the cartridge that's in this one, plug it in properly. Here we go. Swap that one into there, and the programs will run without any problem on the other machine. And you could do that with all the MSX machines in the range, which, as you can imagine, is a significant commercial threat indeed to European and United States computer manufacturers.
Well, like I said, it's a standard. It was comprised not of only software, but also a hardware standard, which meant all MSX software and hardware was interchangeable and would work on any MSX machine. Some of Japan's best-known electronic giants got on board to adopt MSX and make computers for it.
Companies such as Sony, Sanyo, Mitsubishi, Toshiba, Panasonic, JVC, Yamaha, who make bikes, and many more decided to make MSX computers. I didn't know that. I thought they only made two bikes.
No, Yamaha make musical instruments as well as motorbikes, don't they?
And these are big companies that made some seriously good kit. How could it possibly fail?
How could it? So just what was this specification for an MSX computer?
Oh, God.
Well, it consisted of a Zilog Z80A CPU running at 3.58 MHz, and this was an extremely popular CPU at the time and used in many machines actually, such as the Spectrum, the RM380Z, the Osborne, the Enterprise 128, the Amstrad. Although the Amstrad was released a year after the MSX was launched, the TRS-80, there were loads of computers using the Z80. It had a 32 kilobyte ROM running Microsoft Extended Basic, as Josh said, 64K of RAM, a Texas Instruments TMS 9918 video chip, a General Instruments AY3 8910 sound generator with full functional keyboard, four-way cursor control with 10 function keys. It had 2 Atari 9-bit joystick ports, which was fabulous because it meant you could use everybody else's joystick with your MSX. It had at least 1 cartridge slot, a Centronics printer interface, video and audio out sockets, and an RF port to hook it up to a standard television.
Software came on cassette tape, ROM cartridge, or floppy disk. I like floppy disks.
Yeah.
They're just so satisfying when you go and just click them in like that. Video could display 16 colours and had 16 kilobytes of video RAM. Text mode could display 40 by 24 or 32 by 24 characters with a full resolution of 256 by 192. The system also supported 32 sprites of one colour with a maximum of 4 sprites per horizontal line. That basically means it can do a bunch of colours and the size of the lettering on the machine. That's basically what that means.
So did you have any idea? I'm impressed actually. Do you have any idea what you just said?
I just said, yeah.
Now, that was the spec for the original MSX standard, but later on came the MSX2 in 1985, the MSX2 Plus in 1988, and the MSX Turbo R in 1990, which we won't cover today, and they were never officially launched here in the UK anyway. MSX was very popular in Korea, Japan, South America, Europe, and also in the Soviet Union. They were almost unheard of in the northern United States, and there was only ever 2 models sold there, and these were the Spectra Video 318 and 328 and the Yamaha CX5M. Although this was a full MSX computer, it was advertised as more of a musical instrument computer. The starter kit with a Toshiba included a cassette player, some software, some games, manuals, and that's what we ended up buying. So it was very spur of the moment, not research, and to be honest, I wasn't disappointed with our purchase at all.
So you weren't disappointed that you weren't going to get the +4?
No, that was a much...
That's better, I want that.
That's a better machine, yeah. I could tell from looking at some of the graphics that were on display that was a better machine. MSX Basic is an extremely versatile and command-rich version of BASIC that makes the BASIC shipped with a Commodore 64 look absolutely archaic. On the Commodore 64, there's lots of peek and poke commands that you have to enter to make the C64 do stuff. The MSX had basic commands for almost everything, and it made it a pleasure to write programs for. So thanks, Bill. That was a great version of BASIC you came up with there.
One unfortunate side of having the Z80 as its CPU was that the MSX suffered from a lot of lazy software writing.
Oh, it did, yeah.
And many of the games were badly ported Spectrum efforts, and little proper programming was developed for the MSX, apart from certain game manufacturers such as Konami.
Yeah, I mean, to this day, I think Konami made some of the greatest games ever seen on the MSX platform. Most of these were actually on cartridge. They still fetch big money on eBay today. Some of these games are highly, highly treasured. I saw Metal Gear the other day go for like 300 and something pounds. It's a lot of money. For one game, yeah. I mean, big franchises such as Hypersports, Nemesis or Gradius, Salamander, Penguin Adventure, Metal Gear, Time Pilot, Castlevania are just a few to mention on the MSX platform that are absolutely brilliant.
Getting hold of these games in the UK was difficult, and unless you had an MSX stockist, the seat near you, you had to get many on mail order. Unlike the C64 or Specky, it wasn't a case of walking into WH Smith and grabbing any old game, although you could often find some cassette games on the high street.
That's right, yeah. And the MSX, when programmed properly, was an awesome games machine. It was just brilliant. The first time I saw Nemesis running on the MSX in a shop, it just blew me away. It was miles better than the Spectrum and the Commodore versions. Okay, the scrolling isn't brilliant, but everything else made my friends' machines look primitive in comparison to this. It was just such a game, I had to complete it. I think I must have broke 3 joysticks in a year trying to complete Nemesis, but I got there in the end.
Later, Konami cartridges featured a custom sound chip developed with Yamaha called the SCC chip or Sound Custom Chip. These games have much enhanced sound effects and music that the onboard sound chip can't produce on its own.
No.
The SCC added an extra 5 channels of sound and can be combined with the onboard PSG.
Yeah.
Nemesis 2 is a cartridge that has the SCC chip on board, and we will take a look at that later.
MSX unfortunately didn't become the worldwide standard that the home computer market was screaming out for, but it did become a much loved and easy to use machine that most owners loved to bits. Coupled with the very high manufacturing standards of the Japanese companies that built it, these machines are built like tanks and didn't suffer from the issues the other home computers did at the time, such as the Acorn Electron and other such troublesome machines.
We have 2 Toshibas and 1 Sony Hitbit in the shed, and they are all going strong today. Apart from the Toshiba keyboards, which seem to be much cheaper than the other MSX machines, and it has some failed keys.
It does, yeah. I've had to fix a couple of the keyboards on the Toshibas, but the Sony is absolutely bulletproof. In 1984, Sir Clive Sinclair was interviewed about what he thought of the MSX range and what it was going to do to the British market, and to be fair, he was a bit salty about the MSX standard when asked what he thought of it.
Sinclair. Sir Clive, MSX, is it music to your ears, or does it represent a significant commercial threat?
Certainly not a commercial threat to us. I mean, it's quite clear what's happened here. Japan and America have both, strangely as it may seem, failed to do anything like as well as Britain in the personal computer business. They've suffered very badly from this. The Japanese companies, Sony and many others, have tried again and again to enter the British market and succeed here. They've tried again and again to enter the American market and succeed there. They haven't done very well there. So they've got together to try and form a common standard. They've had that common standard in Japan now for a year or so, hence all these computers. But what should be realized is that all those companies together, all of them, throughout Japan, make fewer computers than Sinclair Research on its own.
At the moment, but surely the threat comes when people start going into their high street electrical stores and seeing well-known names, the Sanyos, the Sonys, the Toshibas, offering computers next door to their accepted electrical goods.
Fine, yes, it's like, but what happens is this. It's just as if all the car manufacturers have got together and said, let's all have the same engine, the same gearbox, the same axle, and let's use the one that was designed 5 years ago. Won't that be great, you know? Nobody will have to bother about it, you know, they'll all take the same spare parts. But it'll be a 5-year-old car, and they'll all be the same.
The MSX standard slowly faded away over the next few years, and by 1988, it was pretty much all over. As we said, MSX was followed by a number of upgrades, featuring slightly more powerful machines, but never launched officially in the UK.
No. The Toshiba HX10 was my first proper home computer, and I was bought it Christmas 1984. I was thrilled to bits with mine, and it was an incredible improvement over the Philips G7000 console. There wasn't really a computer, it was more like a games machine that sat under our telly for many years. I remember Elite being released for the MSX in 1987 by Firebird and Mr. Micro, and do you know what? It's not a bad conversion at all. Many hours were spent on Elite on the MSX, I can tell you. The fact that you could buy any software and hardware with an MSX logo on it, and any 9-pin compatible Atari joystick worked with the system, it was brilliant. I loved it.
An MSX was even used in space, did you know?
I didn't know that.
Well, now you do. A Sony HB900P high-end MSX model was actually used in the Russian Mir space station.
Wow.
MSX really did make it into space.
And you know what happened to the Russian Mir space station, don't you?
No.
It crashed in a ball of flames.
Really?
Right, here's a quick look at some of the great games that have been launched on the MSX over the years. We all like a decent joystick in this shed, don't we?
Yes.
Oh, yes.
We do.
Now, a few weeks ago, we discovered a company called Monster Joysticks and ordered one of their brilliant retro-style Atari 9-pin compatible joysticks. And do you know what?
It's brilliant.
It's absolutely brilliant. It's so good, isn't it?
Yeah.
I've been using it on various computers for the past few weeks now, and it is really, really good. I do love my TAC2. I do love the TAC2, but I've got to admit, Monster Joysticks have done an excellent job here. Now, these joysticks arrive in a kit form. It took me about an hour or so to build.
Is it one of these?
Yeah, and they feature some very nice high-end arcade components indeed. We're not talking cheap switches and joysticks here. They are really, really nice.
They supply a range of basic joystick-only devices as well as components, right up to all-in-one Raspberry Pi kits.
Okay.
They will also soon be stocking a BBC analog to Atari 9-pin converter.
Oh, I'm after one of those.
Which is something he's been after for a long time.
Yeah.
So as soon as we can get hold of one of these, we'll give it a test.
We certainly will. Look them up. Their website is there below. Nice guys. We talk to them from time to time on Twitter. So, thank you very much for joining us today. That was our look at the wonderful MSX range of computers, and we will be catching you again soon next week when we'll be talking about... No idea. It's your choice.
Yay!
Joshua's choice next week, so thank you very much once again.
You probably won't like it.
I'm sure we will. Thank you very much for joining us. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. It means a lot to us, and we'll catch you guys soon. I'm Barry. He's Josh. We're the Retro Shed. Bye!
Bye! Name me a game that came out in 1994. It could be any game.
1994. Banshee on the Amiga, I think.
The Amiga?
Yeah. Still around then. Right, one, two... Are you ready?
Start yawning in here. I haven't been yawning all morning, but I do. Seriously.